Hi everyone, I'm Brett. I'm also focusing on Mount Auburn, and my project is titled Auburn Alive. So back when we were working as a group, we discovered that the neighborhood, back in its original early days, was this place where people in Cincinnati would come and leisurely take their time to walk through the neighborhood and get to know their neighbors. And that really struck a chord with me, because that's, I can't speak because I'm not a resident there today, but you don't really, that's not the first impression you would get as you go down the street there. So building off of that, we looked into some other planning documents and that sort of thing. So I originally was looking at the area of the Glencoe Hole, which, let me zoom in here, this context area. Which was this area where the historic Glencoe Place once stood that was demolished and was really kind of like a black hole in the neighborhood that kind of sucked energy out of this middle area. In between the park there and the hospital and the historic district. So as I started thinking about the Glencoe Hole, I actually went to the neighborhood and saw what was happening, and it actually turned out that this was the area of the neighborhood that was changing most dramatically, rather quickly right now. But when I did that, I discovered this little green field up there in the park, and I said, why is this here? What is this? It looked like it was part of the park, but there was nothing going on there. It was just this open field. So I went back into the parks plan, and I found that on the eastern edge of Inwood Park, the Parks Board had been proposing to develop residential housing there. And I thought, wow, that's such a great opportunity to kind of do something a little different, kind of park-like. And then when I came to that thought, I had also visited a friend who just moved into a neighborhood up near Eden Park that kind of had a similar layout where the house was kind of eased into the park, and there was this transition area where the transition wasn't very clear. So building off of that, I knew I wanted to look at this area. So my zones of thought, Auburn Alive is the area there, the field. I thought it would be very important to connect that area into Inwood Park and outside of the neighborhood, and outside of Mount Auburn's neighborhood, and to the business district along Calhoun Street, and also back into the neighborhood's own historic business district that needs a little bit of help, as Ramon and Madison had pointed out with their plans. And also, I saw this triangle between the park and the historic district and Christ Hospital, and wanted to find some way to connect all of those. So what I came up with here was a plan that didn't really disrupt that park-like feel, but kind of fed into it. So we were looking into what's a kind of green way of building now that's not disruptive to that environmental setting, and decided to look into tiny houses, or in my case, a mix of tiny houses and tiny cottages. So those would be placed on the periphery of the park there. And then we'd also build a gazebo in the nearby existing roundabout that would be open to the public and to the residents. And then also on the southern end, it would bookend with this semi-private, semi-public space called the Big House that the residents of the tiny homes would have access to, where a larger kitchen existed, and a dining room table that they could have larger parties at with friends and family, and that sort of thing. And then going farther south, I proposed this pedestrian bridge to link Inwood Park to Christ Hospital. And the more I thought about it, it's not just for the residents of the intentional community. It could benefit Christ Hospital and the people who work there and visit there and our patients there. And could also serve as a better link to that southern end of the historic district to get people up into Inwood Park and really get the blood flowing between all of them. So looking into the site of the intentional community, so when you think of tiny homes, I think of, when I first thought about it, I said, there's no room to live in here. How like, I can barely get around. Like, we want everybody to be able to have access to this and live comfortably. And the more research I did, I found out that there were tiny houses out there that were being designed by different creative and design groups. The one I specifically found was from a high school in Texas that kind of built their tiny house to resemble kind of a shotgun house, where there's a large open hallway going down the home, and then the bedroom bookends one end, and then the living room and kitchen bookend the other end. And the only room with a wall is the bathroom and the washer and dryer room. And then the other one was actually a home a company designs houses for handicap and elderly folks to. This website actually like intended for these homes to be built on like a farm or in a yard for grandparents. So, but kind of that similar open feel. All the rooms open up to each other. So I thought that would be great. And the great thing about those is that if someone did want to live independently but really weren't that independent, they could also have family live down the street in one of the other homes, and they could feed into each other's energy and really make their life sustainable. So it's not, tiny homes aren't really like exactly family friendly with small children, but that age diversity still plays in there by offering things like a playground that like if elderly folks were to live here, or just anyone, to open it up to the whole family, that they would have access there. And then another thing that we found out with the big house is that where it's situated, there's a fantastic view of Union Terminal in the west end. You can actually see the Ohio River. So playing into that Mount Auburn feel and that special characteristic of the neighborhood that they have with their views. So another little point to add is that this is also the area where if the streetcar was ever extended into Uptown, this is kind of everybody's favorite proposal so far. It would daylight in that valley there where the Glencoe hole was. And I'm proposing something similar to what the Cincinnati Zoo has now, with kind of this like station house at their parking lot that's situated with elevators and escalators and different things. So that stop could get people up to the bridge and into the park, into the hospital, into the historic district, and really just help fill out the neighborhood. So that's my project.